Good afternoon. Welcome to the latest one-to-one dialogue. I'm here in London. I'm joined from Somerset by Paul Miller, Director of Underwriting at Hiscox, one of the world's leading insurance companies. Paul, how are you today?
Yeah, I'm fine, thank you, Martin. Enjoying time away from the office for a bit of a
Yes.
break, arguably, but a different environment.
Is it a mental break or is it a physical break or both?
It's probably more a physical break. I less commute, no hassle, comfortable environment. But yeah, the mental side. I mean, we're very busy, so mentally, I think it's probably a bit tougher, actually, in a way.
Mm. Well, listen, thanks for joining me on the one-to-one today. I think one of the things we're trying to do is put people into the spotlight and talk about things that either frustrate or concern or you feel are, let's say, a frustration in the marketplace. And as an underwriter, you've been in the market for a fairly good number of years and seen what I call headaches, problems, concerns that you would say affect your business and affect the market as a whole. Um, can you share with me, Paul, what you think are your biggest concerns or issues that are out there at the moment, or things on the horizon that we need to look at?
Yeah, I think one of the things I'm working on at the moment with the Icomia Rethink group is to come up with better communication between us and them and the owners or the owners rep, the managers, with all those parties involved with it, because I think there's a fair bit of that still occurs far too late in the day. And if you've got a 100-meter boat, you've probably been negotiating a refit and maintenance period for a reasonable amount of time. And it's sort of, the insurance factor tends to be a bit at the last minute. Oh, yes, sorry, we forgot about this, or we haven't done this bit. And
Yeah.
we're trying to get there a bit earlier. And part of the reason for working with the shipyards is in particular, and in fact, the winter, this last winter gone, if you like, and then with the COVID issue, actually exaggerated the problem in that we had, boats in yards for longer, so our aggregations sitting in yards grew pretty rapidly. And if you look at the big areas like Barcelona or Toulon or these kind of places, we can get quite a lot of big boats in there at the same time, and suddenly our aggregations are in the billions of dollars.
Yes.
And there's concern because it's not an aggregate we would normally expect in the same, in a regular year, let's call it.
Yeah, yeah. So the last few years, you've had some interesting activity in the insurance market, incidents and accidents and other things. How do you think the market's behaving as a result of those, or what are they doing as a result of those projects that have either had a significant fire, or there's been an accident in a shipyard, or even on board, or jet ski stuff? It's been quite well documented or reported in the last few years. What do you think we have to sort of look at as an industry now?
I mean, I think costs are escalating. There's no doubt about it. I mean, the insurance industry in general was, in my view, bumping along the bottom, and something needed to be done. London, from a Lloyd's perspective, certainly reacted when they did a review of all lines of business in the market and came out with their decile 10, which are the 10 worst performing lines in the market, and for a mixture of reasons. And I think certainly from a London market perspective anyway, it was particularly driven by the hurricanes in 2017. But we were in that 10, and if we wanted to survive, keep going, then we needed to make some serious changes in terms of pricing and so forth within our business. And that's what's been happening. It was never going to happen in one go. It's going to take place over a number of years.
Yeah.
And as you've probably seen, the market has shrunk. Some of the players have disappeared in the market and so forth, and that is a big driver. It doesn't matter how big a company you are. If you get losses in that eat up capital, you've got to replace that capital somehow. You've got to pass solvency, and those regulations are pretty tough these days. Therefore you either go and issue more shares and generate some cash, or it's a combination of everything, and that's probably what it is at the moment. It's a combination of everything.
Yeah. Okay, so let's jump into what I call the frustrations you have as an insurance underwriter or as a company, and watching the market from your own position. What frustrates you across the market these days?
I think, if I'm honest, I think we're starting to see, or we had a period in the last 2 or 3 months where we were starting to see owners cut costs. Whether that's crew, whether that's maintenance, whatever it may be, there was a definite driver for that, which I can understand. Is you've got to sort of take a view. Nobody really needs a yacht, so it's very much a luxury item, and why would you want to keep spending all this money on it? But that said, for us, gives us concern, and so forth. So I think it's very. Yeah, it's a very difficult one. It is a frustration for us, but I have understanding, if you like, and sympathy as to why some of that's happening. I think for me, what we're seeing is frustration with a very fractured geographic COVID response, which directly impacts with crew.
Yes.
How do we get crew from A to B? What do we do? And all this kind of sort of discussion. So we're starting to see that, and we're getting requests for, well, can we, use the third engineer because our first engineer is ill? We had to leave the boat. We haven't got one, and I think Flag State are probably seeing some of that as well. They're getting the same question set that we are, in a way.
Yes.
So there's elements of that. I think one of the, I guess, in terms of things I'd like to see off the back of that, actually, is there must be a way we can get electronic, let's call it electronic medical passport for crew of some sort. If you're tested in one place, you should be able to go, and there has to be an easy way of doing that. And somebody, I think, will no doubt come out with something that fits on your smartphone and your barcode or whatever it is, but is relevant for a period of time.
Yes.
But that sort of thing needs to come out of this. I think I will hope something like that will come out of it. It will make life a lot easier all round for everybody, I think.
One of the things I talked about with Brendan O'Shannessy previously was this whole thing about operational fatigue and safety and minimum manning requirements. What are your thoughts on that at the moment, Paul?
I mean, minimum manning. We sort of, as insurers, we rely on Flag State and so forth to set those benchmarks as such. I think we have a big hole in it in terms of vessels under 500 tons that are private and pleasure. That you can run with 3 crew, and if it chartered, it has to run with 7, which is just crazy, quite frankly. But there is not much enthusiasm from Flag State to take that on and embrace it. From our perspective, I'm sure you're aware, I have a moan at them from time to time and try and push them along as best as we can, because what we'll end up with, certainly even just from a Red Ensign side of things, is if there is an issue and it's a crew is killed or injured or something that's directly relative to minimum or not enough people on board, things could have been different, we'll end up with an MIRB investigation, and it's all reactive. And no one wants to embrace it and be proactive at the moment. So we're pushing it hard on some of our policies on that front, where we're trying to push for warranties and requirements in the policy to increase the number of crew. And we're getting resistance in some areas, we're not in others. I think I guess ultimately it depends on the owner's view of how he wants to run the boat, and or the captain's view of how he runs the boat. I mean, I don't think any captain out there deliberately runs his boat unsafely, without any doubt. I mean, that's not our experience whatsoever. But if the purse strings are held by the owner, and he's got to try and make the best of a bad job in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. So let's look forward and into I call it the brave new world. Rather than talk about the pandemic today, we'll talk about what's going to happen in 5-10 years' time, maybe less than that. What would you like to see happen and change about our marketplace? What are your sort of, let's say, what's your wish list?
God, wish list, crikey. I think, God, in terms of a wish list, I think things being run probably more efficiently. I think it's probably one route to go. Whether that is, in terms of crew or the vessels themselves. I think it does make a huge amount of sense to have more shore-based management, in the sense of the volumes of data coming off these boats should be, I think most of it goes unlooked at. I mean, on the other side, I mean, that's one of the things we're grappling with is, if we've got all these masses of data coming off these boats, how do we approach it when we have a claim that will give us an insight into perhaps what went on, what didn't go on, perhaps, or whatever it may have been. But we can't, at the moment, I don't think we're not equipped to use what we would call our traditional surveyors.
Yeah.
We need some kind of data analyst, but who actually understands, I don't know, what a carbon mass looks like, or what something, actually understands what it is he's looking at.
Yeah.
And that's a difficult one for us, I think, in terms of getting there, finding the right people. But wish list. I mean, God, I mean, there's lots of stuff. I mean, have everything in boring paint jobs, nothing with metallic paint, nothing that's going to be, all the kind of things that just cause silly issues. But no, I mean, I think education.
That's an interesting point. That's an interesting point, Paul, in terms of what I think is something that we should look at as a topic of conversation is almost a simplification or a dumbing down of the complexity.
Yeah.
So you get a better result, which is what you're almost alluding to with the paint system, that you end up with these crazy ideas that are creatively driven, but actually create more problems and more cost and more claim.
Yeah.
Because it hasn't been thought through properly.
I think there's an element of that. I mean, I think some of it is, understanding shipyards giving the owners what they want. Yes, I want this paint job to match my car or whatever it is, and these kind of things, and fine, that's absolutely fine. But I think we, from an insurer's perspective, and this is a criticism of us, I think, is there's not enough distinction between how we deal with the let's call it the normal and the extreme, from our perspective. But there's elements of that. I think, it's about, I think for most people, it's about the enjoyment of being in a nice environment with your family, enjoying the sea, that freedom. I think there'll be a lot more of that post-COVID, because people will, I think, warm, shall we say, towards that kind of, I won't call it isolation, but it is in a way. It's, you've got your own bubble that you can control, and you can sit in a nice environment and really, enjoy yourselves.
Yeah.
And to make that simpler and easier makes a lot of sense. Do you really need a boat that does 34 knots when, if you're going to be on with your family for a month, you can cruise around at 10 or 12 and do it differently.
Yeah.
But, that's no different to somebody saying, well, I need to go and buy my, whatever it is, my family wagon, or I'm going to go and buy my Aston Martins now. I mean, there's always going to be a market for that.
Yeah. Going back to your point you mentioned earlier about how the insurance market could treat the spectrum of yachts slightly differently, or adapt to how the markets evolve. is that feasible or practical to start adapting to?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly feasible, absolutely. Whether competition will, if you like, within within the insurance industry, allow that to happen or not, or is a different matter. I think some of that is being driven by competition, certainly historically. Let's put it that way. I think going forwards, data, without any doubt from the insurance side of things. There's a lot of push to use a lot of these new, the analytical side of things and the new AI and all this kind of stuff. But and I've had a number of the bigger, what I call the marine AI companies approach us saying, come and have a look at our system. What can we do and all this, and it works. Don't get me wrong; it really works for commercial shipping, where a boat is continually moving, and if it isn't moving, it isn't earning. We can tell you, oh, it's doing 15.2 knots and it's burning fuel at this rate, and and so forth. But a yacht that sits, and Brendan hit it on the head in a way, a yacht that sits, that its normal operating thing is to be sitting in the marina for 3 or 4 months of the year. Actually, it just doesn't work with that AI side of it. To me, I can just go on AIS and track the boat and say, well, it's here, there, and this is where it is. And then it's all that, it's bits of it, and to some extent, we go back full circle back to the data and all the data coming off the boats and who owns that data, and whether if something goes wrong, whether we're allowed to effectively investigate that data.
Yeah. Will it enhance safety though, the amount of data that's being pumped out, or are you seeing anything that actually could improve?
Yes, I mean, I think to some extent it could, without a doubt. We looked at one recently that would say, well, we can give warnings to the vessel in respect of an impending collision, and we can do this and we can do that. And we sort of, that sounds fantastic, but I can't think of any collisions in that sense of it, other than a marina when someone's docking, that we've had in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
We're not traffic sitting in a shipping lane continually, trying to avoid each other. And whether you're 50 meters or a 100-meter boat, you can turn in a pretty small circle, and you're pretty maneuverable and can get out of the way. So we don't tend to suffer from those kind of incidents too much.
The big issue I look at is obviously things like the size and speed and power and weight of tenders, all the other toys that go on, or helicopters. So it's just looking at how do we make our industry, let's say, not even accountable, but let's say just have a really good track record. That we're almost, one of the things I want to look at for the future is, can we set standards that are not just following other industries, that are almost above and beyond.
Set our own benchmark.
We tend to be quite sort of reactionary, as you say, and adapt to other rules, not our own sort of standards. So is that something we should be looking at?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think it makes an awful lot of sense. I do struggle sometimes to understand why some of these big yachts need 4 or 5 limo tenders and all the other bits that go with it, because unless you've only got 12 people on board or whatever it is, unless they're all going in completely different directions, it sort of doesn't make a lot of sense. Yes, there's a design element to that, and it's about different things, but whether you can, I guess tenders become much more of a utility type boat, where it is the rescue boat, it is the owner's limo, it is various, it plays a number of roles. And ultimately, I get, the result of that is either you're building smaller boats, or the owner gets more space on his own boat. And he's the one paying the bills. So
of course. So let's jump into the Caribbean, because everyone's talking about the Caribbean season being a busy year this year. What's your projection?
I mean, yeah, I read the same reports as you. They're always saying there's going to be a massive number of storms and so forth. I mean, we had one or two very early on that didn't really turn into much. Um, yeah, I mean, if we get a big one that, shall we say, hits the Caribbean and or Southeast Florida, then from an insurance perspective, it's going to be an expensive year, and for owners going forwards for at least the next 2 or 3 years, it's going to get really expensive, more so than it is now, without any doubt. And I think there will be a big reduction in the size of the market, and people will struggle to find insurance cover.
Yeah, because I think that's the issue. When you look at the tonnage value these days and the stuff that's coming out of the yards, these are basically 9-figure boats.
Yeah.
So how do we as a market adapt to that, as you say, if the price point gets out of control? What is on the horizon?
I think, well, it will. I guess it'll get to a point whereby owners will be running much more of their own risk from the insurance side of it. I think, I could certainly see owners running 25% of the value of their boat themselves. Certainly if we get to really big values and we just run out of market capacity, without any doubt, that's a definite. I think, and on the smaller end, we'll start to see that as well, in a different way with older boats and so forth, where we see it quite a lot. Probably the worst example we see probably is in the race boat market, where we end up with 15-year-old boats changing hands, and the cost of replacing the masts and spars is makes the boat a total loss, effectively, or beyond that. And you sort of get to the point when it doesn't make any sense, and we're sort of going, actually, we don't, but we should be saying, what's the size of the owner's bank balance, because he's going to be, contributing an awful lot to this.
Yeah.
And it becomes quite difficult for us to deal with things like that at times.
Yeah. Another question I have, Paul, which is always in the back of my mind, in terms of yachts going further afield. Everyone's talking about explorer yachts and discoveries and going Antarctic across Northwest Passage. What's the insurance market's response to that at the moment?
I mean, Antarctic is probably a little easier than Northwest Passage, if I'm honest about it, from our perspective anyway. Yes, Northwest Passage is very difficult. The potential requirements for boats going through, I think, are likely to tighten. Without doubt. We get thrown back at us. Oh, well, there's been 30 or 40 yachts gone through in the last period of time, and so forth. But without being rude about it, they tend to be in the main sort of 40 to 60 foot sailboats with a couple of people on board, who might get stuck in the ice for a year and come out and this kind of stuff. It's not €100 million mega yacht. I mean, there have been a few, don't get me wrong, mega yachts that we want to see vessels with ice strengthening on the hull, protections to the props. They should take an ice pilot or a proper pilot with them, and so forth. And that's where maybe in what we're seeing evolve in the modern world, shall we say, with the ability for shore-based ice pilot to be monitoring and advising continually, as opposed to being physically on board, has a I think that has a potential to help things to some extent. It's a difficult one. We get owners that come to us and we get presented with a lovely sort of 200-page document, but most of the time that really refers to how the owner's going to go ashore, look at this, look at that, and all that kind of stuff. And from my perspective, quite frankly, I'm not worried about that. It's the boat I insure. It's the physical damage to the vessel, rather than the owner, the guests, or whoever, being ashore and staying safe in the if the conditions get extreme.
Yes.
It probably sounds a bit harsh, but actually, that's the reality of it. Is we only insure the boat for physical damage, and I think they've got to think about it. If you're on the Northwest Passage and you have a problem, where are you going to find a salver?
Yes.
Where are you going to get someone to come and help you out?
Yeah.
And that's the difficulties.
Yeah. So let's talk about the future, long term. Let's say projection. Let's call it. What are your expectations? What's your sort of, let's say, focus at the moment, Paul? Where are you looking?
Well, I think at the moment it's for us get through this year and get into next year. I think my gut feeling is I think we will see quite a lot of activity next year in terms of people, using their boats, getting out there. We're certainly starting to see some movement in the market in terms of boats changing hands.
Yeah.
We're being asked to quote on potential purchases and this kind of stuff. I think there's a balance between owners going further and further afield and access to good medical facilities. It's a difficult one, isn't it? And it's always been there in a way, but we've never had COVID in the background to drive some of that.
Yes. Yeah.
And as we've seen with cruise ships, you end up with some of them bouncing around from port to port because and not being allowed in.
Yeah.
There's no reason why it won't happen to yachts in the same way. Absolutely no reason why it won't.
Yeah. So in general, you have a level of optimism.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think it is. Yeah, people will sort of say, "Crikey," and it's a bit. I mean, to me, it's a little bit like after 9/11, we saw a huge number of people who are building yachts. I mean, probably sailboats to some extent, who are building our sailboat, actually changed their plans, changed the interior of the boat to some extent, and actually went sailing for 2 or 3 years with their family because everybody had been in one of the towers to see their brokers or their lawyers or something, and there was very much, I think, an attitude it could have been me.
Yes.
And I think I don't think the COVID situation is actually that different.
I agree. I
think it will drive some of that.
It is that catalyst or that wake up call almost to say, actually, let's go and live.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I think, as you said at the beginning of the conversation, Paul, the yacht is becoming this private island that has almost been overlooked in the past in some ways. That this is the perfect escape pod. It just has to be operated safely and let's say developed in a way that actually makes more sense for the future.
Yeah. I think we're all. I would hope we're all sort of seeing to some extent a better work-life balance because of we're at home, but we're doing it. We're dealing with it. Well, why would you not run your business or do your stuff from your yacht?
Yes.
It's just it's taking that leap, isn't it? And it becoming actual everyday practice and reality rather than it's something I do a couple of weeks a year sort of thing.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's the interesting catalyst that there may be an era now where we see people saying, actually, to operate my life from this safe haven, maybe a whole new, brave new world for yacht ownership.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Does number of days on board affect the insurance policy?
No, not generally. We tend to give a 12 months navigating policy and that's it. I mean, obviously, the impact will be more on crew. Than having a crew rotation and that kind of stuff, and I guess the more you rotate, the more your exposure to COVID, and unless there is a system, and we go back to our electronic passport, medical passport type of thing, and that will give everybody the confidence and the comfort levels they're seeking, to do that. But yeah, I can certainly see that happening.
Yeah. Anything else you want to share with the audience, Paul?
Um, no, I think we've kind of I think boat shows. I was going to actually touch on boat shows. So sort of, the future. I mean, we use boat shows in a different way. Monaco being the prime example. We go to Monaco. We see people that don't particularly come to London very often. We see, there was a big yard in Australia that we've insured for many years. Well, I go and see them. We have a beer. We go and have a chat. Any questions, any queries, and it's sort of that kind of servicing and meet and greet in a way. Yes, we occasionally get asked to quote on a risk while we're there because somebody's thinking about buying it. But quite frankly, to me, it would make sense for someone to do some analysis about how many boats actually get sold at a boat show, and what and there's this dislocation, I think, in that we sort of seem to be seeing from the people that run Monaco. Well, we want much more of the customers there, and I see it as a B2B show, not. For me, it's much more of a B2B show because I'm seeing people that I don't see regularly, and I've got a captive audience.
Yes, yeah.
So for me, it's a very different thing. These virtual boat shows have been quite interesting. You plug into them and you have a look. They will only improve as the software and everything else gets better.
Yeah.
I don't. Why would you not sell a boat to an owner who doesn't need to fly 3,000 miles away, and you can give him a live video tour of the boat with if you've got somebody, I suppose, with the skills at least to be able to do that, or get, if you're thinking of taking the boat with the captain, why would you not get the captain to give you the tour? This is my home. This is what I run. This is what I do. This is what you're coming to.
Yes.
It seems makes a huge amount of sense to me.
Yeah, I think that will definitely trigger a change in the marketplace. And as you say, the B2B element of our industry still needs places to meet, and that will always be part of our culture, I think. I don't see us having virtual meetings for the rest of our lives for every single engagement, but it's going to change everything from, let's say, now on as to how we do business.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. And everybody's looking at their P&Ls and how much budget do I spend, and what do I do with my budget for next year? Do I maintain it? Do I increase it? Do I cut it? Good.
Well, Paul, thanks a million for your time. I look forward to seeing you for a beer somewhere in this when you're back, and
absolutely.
I'll see you in November as well. So thanks.
Thanks for inviting me, Martin.
Thank you.